Welcome to Hustlin' Faith. This podcast is dedicated to helping women who want to analyze, apply, and amplify their God-given gifts. We accomplish this by discussing topics such as business, self-improvement, health and beauty, and my random thoughts about life from a Christian perspective. I'm your host, Latasha Johnson.
Hey friends, today we're talking about something that I believe is quietly destroying a lot of people's lives. The blind leading the blind. And the scary part is that most people don't even realize that they're blind. And they definitely don't realize that who they're following is blind too. And so Jesus said in Matthew chapter 15, verse 14, if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into a ditch. And so that's not just spiritual, right? That's life, that's business, that's decisions, relationships, that's everything. And so let's be real. We've been conditioned to trust people based on titles, credentials, and status. Oh, they're a doctor, they're a lawyer, they're a leader. And so we stop thinking, we stop researching, we stop discerning, and we just follow. But here's the truth. A title does not equal truth. Credentials do not equal discernment. And authority does not mean accuracy. You can take a look at our government if you're curious about any examples in real life. And so another example of this, a good example of this is Jephthah in Judges chapter 11. So here's what happened. He made a rash vow to God and said that he would sacrifice whatever came out of his house first. His daughter came out. And now he's faced with the consequences of his words. But the real issue was not just the vow that Jephthah made. It was ignorance. If Jephthah had known the law, understood God's character, taken the time to think instead of reacting emotionally, this never would have happened. And so due to Jephthah's spiritual blindness to the law, Jephthah failed to realize that since God had already promised victory, he didn't need to bargain with God. And human sacrifice was forbidden. It's clearly stated in the law. And that vows could actually be revoked. And that's Leviticus chapter 5, in case you're wondering. So Jephthah had a way out of this entire situation. But due to his ignorance regarding the law, his daughter paid the price. And here's the deeper truth. The blind, they don't just hurt themselves, right? They hurt the people that are connected to them. Hence why we're told to be more like the Bereans. They didn't just listen, they verified, okay? They searched the scriptures for themselves. And that's the standard. Not blind agreement, active discernment. And so sadly, most of us are not like the Bereans, which is why the blind leading the blind is still happening today, right? Generational patterns. God doesn't have grandkids, okay? Everyone has to seek God for themselves, learn truth for themselves, discern for themselves. Otherwise, you will inherit spiritual blindness, right? Misguided beliefs, cultural conditioning. People follow their parents, they follow their environment and their community without ever asking, is this actually right? And so again, the government is an excellent example in how the blind is leading the blind, which is why our country is in the, quite frankly, moral and financial crisis that we're in, right? I mean, we've got people building statues, golden statues of themselves. And so if you realize, I've been wrong, I've been following blindly, good, okay? That's awesome because that's not failure. You now are aware. What you just did equals awareness, right? So the first step is to be open to correction. The truth doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it's embarrassing, it's humbling, it's uncomfortable. I know because I've been there, right? But growth requires honesty. You cannot skip that step. Step number 2, you need to acknowledge and accept, not just I was wrong, but I'm going to change. Because insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. You can't have that, right? And then step number 3 is to do your own research. My goodness, people, read the Bible for yourself. Study the scripture for yourself. Learn the full context, not just bits and pieces that people like to cherry pick to, support their stance. Compare the scripture with scripture. Don't build beliefs off of just one verse, and don't follow sound bites, right? Number 4, use discernment. Ask yourself, does this align with the truth? Does this align with God's character? Does this make sense when tested? And then step number 5, teach others, right? Your testimony matters, even your mistakes, especially your mistakes, okay? Because what embarrassed you might free someone else. And so at the end of the day, we cannot afford to be blind, right? You definitely cannot afford to follow blind leaders, because when the blind lead the blind, everybody falls. And so I want to leave you with this. Are you actually seeking truth, or are you just following what you've been told? And if you're the latter, it's time to study for yourself, think for yourself, and most importantly, let God lead you, not people's opinions.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoy listening to Hustle and Faith and would like to support the show, please consider sharing it with your friends, rate or leave a review, donate, or make a purchase at our shop starring You Crew. Remember, if you're everything to everyone, you risk being no one. You never know who you will inspire. See you in the next episode.